It's February 15th, 2022, so on the calendar grid, because this is what it looks like. I mean, this is what's confusing, again, about the linguistics of this area as humans. They called this pattern of squares in some kind of building blocks, they called this grid. What area of the grid are you in when you overlay this at space between here and there in nautical? I don't know how I know that. Again, it was one of my taken, but by the correct, admirable, who taught whatever. And so in like a cellophane over undescript and then labeled for whatever the cellophane is used for. They call it a grid. It's, and then you sector, well then you, no you don't sector, but you, whatever. So, but then sometimes they call it graph paper if you're at a drafting board on land over this. They called it graph paper, but then graph was indicative of when they built the graphs. They usually had, when they charted, it was lines up, lines down. It was more analytical. So again, the construct that they built with the word, the key-op words that they used in this particular base, like the particular area, and I didn't learn it in Bayside Station. I have to think about this. I think it was Oyster Bay, but we didn't use graph paper in Oyster Bay. And I can't remember if Lloyd Harbor Elementary, we did not use graph paper. And in Cold Spring Harbor High School, we did not use graph paper. I don't even think we ever used graph paper, but I've used graph paper before. But again, that's not in this life frame. It's undisclosed history. I mean, anyhow, so when I say, like, is that, I mean, I have to make the determination and the call myself because I don't have, like, I don't have who I am built for. I only have the set of circumstances that this whatever keeps presenting with. So is that a grid? Is that a graph? It could be either, honestly, but I don't want it to get confused with on the record, off the record, because it's, I don't have that motility. Alright, so now, the Nucci is my, ear thing, number 12, who happens to have a grid box of 15. He came home yesterday with this, dated 2017. It's 2022, and I'm just reading about it. There's 7 articles in it. I know that Zibin is important in whatever. This has an international license, apparently. Again, I know that's important. It says all rights are reserved for ReadWorks Inc. There's a ReadWorks org mention in it. It also says it is core knowledge. It has an R in a circle, and then foundation, made available through licensing under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 4.0 International License. So who's supplying Nucci's whatever mom with information? That's what I got here. And then it says, this does not in any way imply that the Core Knowledge Foundation endorses this work. This article is licensed under Creative Commons Attribution, not dash non-commercial share alike 4.0 international. I have to think on that one. But my point is that I've got that, and they said here about the the visual interpretation has been so convoluted between what's a Native American, what qualifies as a British. I mean, for me, it's the beaches of Normandy, it's Brittany, it's Britannia, it's shared with the Scots, the islands, the English, the Welsh of the Northern Highlands. I mean, the Gaul and the Goth, yeah, okay, whatever. I've been around for a while. So, I don't really get or like this set of circumstances in this project called America. It's not my cup of tea. Not a big fan. And I don't really understand how they thought they were, or how their whatever is building stuff. I mean, if I stick on Lost City of Atlantis in the Atlantic, whatever part of this, whatever. I had somebody walk into Nucci's school the other day. Looked like he's not from around here either. And he said to me, he's like, he didn't say to me, he was walking in a child that doesn't look like they're from around here, but in a different context. And I'm putting on Nucci's Doc Martens, and he goes, how much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? And I'm like, wow, I haven't heard any humans say that before to my face, other than my kids, that I can remember anyway. And then I'm thinking, Nooch brought it up the other day as well, and I'm like, how about she sells seashells by the seashore? So I don't really know what that translates for in humans outside of the isolation time encapsulate. Like, if I'm in a time capsule, it's kind of like that thing that you put together with some papers and some whatever, and then you dig a hole and you stick it inside, and then the land folks forget about and then dig it back up, and they're like, oh my god, look at this treasure. Right, yeah, that's how I kind of am at the moment, because I really have not, I mean, there's been stuff, but whatever. So they brought up on this teleportation this morning about Camp Lejeune, and when I read the outside signs of it, it says something about expedite. And first of all, LEJEUNE, it translates out to the I-1, encoded and decoded for cipher. Yet everybody inside the camp. Now, is that the America's version of World War II Nazi, what they called Nazi war camps, where they're blaming Hitler for frying all of the Jews? Just curious, because Hitler I met and was supposed to marry, are the Americans and the confusing British and the unrest in the colonies, are they trying to say that he also fried the Americans? Because I didn't hear that part of the story, and that would not make sense logistically whatsoever, considering he's my soft underbelly of whatever. So now, how does that work in family certainty and knowledge? Because I'm listening to this teleportation, and there's, I don't know what they're classifying. I mean, according to these documents, I mean, the pictures show that family specific is rock, paper, scissors, and European portrait on picture. By reading the context and flipping through the words and the keyups, it would appear that the British are being portrayed in some parts, not all of the context either, which gets even more confusing depending on what operation it is, that like this is being referenced somehow as now British. I am pretty sure that that comes from a whole different, if we're going by imperial hectares, and if we're like doing Boston mass acre, like conveying a message, I don't know why in the Boston Massacre this is being called, like, or this is being inferenced or referenced as, and then it says she's telling a story about some gentleman who tells the slavery story just ever so slightly different, because he's like telling a story about how they were slaves and he was bonded by the ships. Now I'm like, right, see, here's the thing. In this American history story that they've been trying to sell to my kind since I got here, it's more of like, here's the car. We're all driving. Like, why don't you hop on in? We'll make room. Right, yeah, okay, so, and then with that sentiment, like, baseline, they're, like, really selling the story and, like, the schematic. Like, no, we bought the car, we rented the car, we belong. Right, yeah, there's some, I don't know what going on, but, I'm really looking around going, I'm not feeling that level of story, because I heard this Auschwitz thing going on in Europe before I got here. Now I'm here in Camp Lejeune, had some whatever. I'm noticing a very large turnout of whatever is non-familial. And it's right, so you arrived and were bonded on ships, but were those like naval carriers or were those drug like cargo ships or airplanes? I'm just curious because I'm really feeling like this thought of like wooden slave ships where they portrayed in the movie like Roots and Kunta Kinte, right? I'm thinking the artistic flair really misled the American public to like how to handle the civil uprising and American unrest that we're currently experiencing.
Tomorrow on CBS Mornings, a generation forgotten by history. During this Black History Month, we'll look back at the first generation.
Did they get forgotten? Because they are all the rage on the TV and in the headlines. It's Black Lives Matter is all I ever hear, and not in a black sheep in the Irish Highlands kind of a way. It really more is like a, no, we are like really whatever, something else.
Of freed slaves and their determination to ensure their children would be great. At nearly 90,
They
Daniel
did
Smith,
ensure
the
that,
surviving son of a
didn't
slave,
they?
and shares the advice from his father, who was born into bondage.
He grabbed me.
Okay, so now if you don't belong in a place and you jump on a ship and they give you a word to call yourself the minute you get there to distinguish you're not the indigenous population, here's the word, here's the papers, here's the whatever. You're bonded to this whatever because we have to be able to still manage your entry and what is the receivership. How did that allowance get so confusing to uphold and correct if the ratios and the numbers and management are starting to see issues?
And shook me. He said, "You have nothing to cry about. This is America. We came from the strongest of the strong."
Now that's interesting. Right, we already poisoned the people, like Camp June people, or somebody did, in order to reshift, and however that works, and nobody really tells the truth in outer or upper management to like my level. You have to kind of read between the lines on old stories, and that does make sense.
We survived the ships.
The ship.
He gave me a signal.
Ships, like, are we talking Pearl Harbor? Like they sank like Navy vessels and... Or are we talking like Customs and Borders Patrol? We're trying to stop the drug smugglers from smuggling people, and they made it through the, like, I don't know, there used to be a game like Rover Rover, don't let whatever come over, and then like the kids would run and try to break the line. I don't know, is it something like that? Because we survived the ships, like we survived the trip here. So now I'm just, I don't know, because I hear that some people have a process and then there's others that just don't listen to authority.
To be strong and to survive.
See how Smith and others in his generation went on to thrive. That is tomorrow on CBS Mornings. Your local news is next.
Good morning. It is 8:25 on this Tuesday, February 15th. That bitter cold continues today, but milder temperatures are right around the corner.
Now, at this exact same moment, I don't know if that's street level equipment or if that's, again, because the house is starting to make rumbles. Now, this does not happen all the time. It started yesterday and it's happening again today. Again, the sunlight is a whole nother story. But that's been going on for a while. But the outer, like, and today they made a mention of hertz, so I don't know, I guess it's thematic in threads. It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole, Cattaruzza. It's Earth, solar system, Milky Way, universe, galaxy is broken. And I read an article that one of the humans or whatever wrote about a theoretical possibility, or in actuality, I don't really know what words they use when they let these things out, about dead galaxies and dead cities in galactic form, which just goes back to where I am at with a broken galaxy. Somehow broke off from planetary safety. Like if there's an Earth and a couple of different measurement tools in planets in a solar system, I can see by the light and by the way my human looks that there's something off with the tuning of the one solar system that I'm in, that I arrived in. Again, I use the word grid 3. It's ear or year 78, and it's 19th century. It was right, I think, right before the bicentennial year, or right around that big whatever. We've passed through something called a Y2K. We passed through something called a Mayan calendar with the Bach tunes. These are like timing headlines. And where could my vector be? Today, like the TV writes, they use the label February 15th, 2022.